The series begins with Reacher walking into a small store, planning to sell an old vinyl record. The shop owner barely looks at it, saying it's outdated, but Reacher argues that college students in town would probably buy it. Before he can say more, a car pulls up outside, immediately grabbing his attention. Seconds later, it crashes into a parked car, and a man inside pulls out a gun, grabbing a teenage boy from the vehicle. Reacher moves fast, ready to step in, but the kidnapper fires a round of bullets his way, forcing him to take cover. He waits for the right moment, and when the car starts pulling off, he fires back. His shot lands, making the vehicle spin out before slamming into another car. Wasting no time, he takes out the gunman, rushes to the boy, and tells him they need to leave now before backup arrives. As they're about to run, another man charges at them. Reacher reacts instantly, taking him down with a shot, but when he looks closer, he realizes the man is a federal agent. Knowing he just stepped into a major mess, he grabs the boy and takes off. Their escape doesn't last long, though, because a police officer spots them and starts chasing them. The chase gets intense, with Reacher using every trick he knows to shake off the cop. After a while, he finally loses them and finds a quiet spot to hide with the boy. He tells him to call for help, making it clear that he needs to vanish fast since he just took out a federal agent with an unlicensed gun. But the boy, desperate, begs him to stay. He says his father has enough power to fix this and make it all disappear, especially since Reacher was only trying to save him. Reacher isn't convinced, but listens anyway. When he asks the kid's name, he introduces himself as Richard Beck. They talk some more, and after a bit of back and forth, Reacher finally agrees to go with him. They drive to Richard's home, and when they reach the massive mansion gates, a bodyguard approaches. The guy immediately demands that Reacher step out of the car for a search. Reacher refuses at first, but Richard, keeping it calm, politely asks him to just go along with it. With a sigh, Reacher steps out, letting the bodyguard do his check, though the guy's attitude is far from friendly. Once the search is done, they're finally allowed inside the massive house. Richard introduces Reacher to his family, and also to Chapman Duke, the head of security. After the introductions, Reacher is taken to meet Richard's father, Zachary, a man with serious power and influence. They exchange greetings, and Zachary, clearly grateful, offers Reacher a drink as a small gesture of thanks for saving his son. Reacher turns down the drink. As they talk, Zachary asks him to explain exactly what happened during the kidnapping attempt. Reacher doesn't hold back, saying the guy Zachary hired to protect Richard is completely useless. He points out that the attack was planned from the start, but the so-called bodyguard only noticed the danger at the last second, nearly letting the kidnappers win. Reacher makes it clear that all he needs is a place to lay low for a few days and some cash to buy a fake ID so he can disappear. Zachary, knowing it won't be simple, admits that since Reacher saved his son's life, he now owes him. He promises to think it over. Just as Reacher is about to leave, he grabs the untouched glass of liquor, holding it for a moment before setting it back down. He tells Zachary that if he wants to run his fingerprints, he might as well make it easy for him. Zachary, slightly amused, tells him not to take it personally, saying he just needs to know exactly who he's dealing with. Reacher doesn't flinch and simply reminds him that he's the one who saved his son. Later that night, Reacher finds Richard in his room painting. He casually points out how strange it is that Zachary hasn't personally checked on him after everything that happened, but Richard says they already talked on the phone. Right then, someone informs Reacher that Zachary wants to see him again. When they meet, Zachary says that Reacher has already made the news. The record store owner gave the police a solid description of him. The only good thing is that the description is too vague. Since Reacher looks like any linebacker on a football team, no one can properly identify him yet. Zachary then tells him that his team did some digging into his past, and after seeing what they found, they're both stunned and seriously impressed. Reacher sits across from Zachary when, out of nowhere, the businessman tells Paulie to put a gun on the table. He then orders Reacher to play Russian roulette, wanting to see if he can follow orders. Reacher isn't thrilled about the idea since it's both reckless and illegal, but Zachary makes it clear that this is the only way forward. With no real choice, Reacher picks up the gun, spins the cylinder, and pulls the trigger. He does this nearly 4 times before Zachary suddenly takes the gun back, looking satisfied. With a nod, he accepts Reacher into his team. As they leave the room, Reacher tells Duke to return his gun, but Duke refuses. He says dealing with Paulie is already enough, and he doesn't want another loose cannon walking around with a gun. Smirking, Reacher claims he wasn't fooled and knew the gun wasn't loaded the whole time. Duke, keeping a straight face, proves otherwise by showing that the gun was fully loaded. This actually catches Reacher off guard. Reacher then asks what they would have done if he had actually ended himself. Duke, with zero emotion, says they would have handled it just like they did with the last guy. Later, Reacher is taken to his new room. Duke tells him that he's starting work first thing in the morning, but Reacher clearly isn't happy about the schedule. Duke then points out that while Beck might trust him, he doesn't. Once Reacher is finally alone, he thoroughly checks the room for hidden cameras. After making sure no one is watching, he pulls a hidden phone from his shoe and dials Susan. The call is short, but he confirms that he's in. A few days earlier, Reacher sits by the roadside, quietly watching everything around him. He spots a young boy trying to steal and immediately stops him. Instead of making a scene, he hands the kid some money and tells him to find honest work. Right after that, he sees the man he's been keeping an eye on walking out of a building and getting into a car. Reacher tries to follow, but traffic makes it impossible to keep up. Reacher realizes he's about to lose his target, so he quickly asks the kid for his phone. He dials the 110th Special Investigators and asks to speak with the commanding officer, but he's told that Major Turner isn't available. He then asks Officer Powell to pass on a message, requesting a callback as soon as possible. Powell informs him that Turner won't be available for another 2 weeks. Not wanting to waste time, Reacher asks him to run a license plate. Powell is stunned for a moment, realizing he's speaking to the founder of his department, but quickly regains his composure and asks for the plate number. However, there's an issue with the system, and Powell tells Reacher he'll reach out when it's back up. Reacher tells him to note down his current location before ending the call. That evening, while at home, Reacher hears a sudden knock on the door. A voice claims to be a federal agent, instantly putting him on edge. Wasting no time, he jumps out the window to escape, but his plan fails. Susan Duffy is already waiting for him. Afterward, they sit down for a long discussion about an ongoing federal investigation into a shady rug import business called Bizarre Bazaar. The DEA suspects the company isn't just dealing in rugs, but smuggling something much worse into the country. They then show Reacher a picture of Zachary and ask if he knows him. Without hesitation, he denies any connection. The agents, however, press him for help. Before agreeing to anything, Reacher lays down a condition. They need to track down a specific Asian American man for him. A few days later, the agents return with the information. The man is Xavier Quinn, a corrupt military intelligence officer with a dark past. Once involved in illegal activities, Quinn was believed to have been shot in the head and tossed off a cliff into the sea. Somehow he survived. Now he's back and working with Zachary and his company, Bizarre Bazaar. As Reacher and Susan step aside for a private talk, she shares another crucial piece of information. A well-respected agent, Teresa Daniels, had gone undercover inside Beck's organization to expose its true operations, but she has since disappeared without a trace. Desperate for answers, Susan is willing to use Reacher as an unofficial operative to infiltrate Beck's business, find Teresa, and track down Quinn for his own mission. To make this work, she admits that Richard's kidnapping was completely staged. The whole thing was planned to make Reacher look like a hero, gain Zachary's trust, and get him inside. Over the next few days, the team fine-tunes every detail to ensure the plan runs smoothly. Stephen, one of their operatives, is assigned to play the shooter in the fake kidnapping. He practices making the attack look as real as possible, using fake bullets. Even the staged murder of a cop was part of the setup, designed to make sure Reacher had no choice but to go underground. Back in the present, Reacher is ready to execute his mission. He assures Susan that he'll check Beck's estate for anything suspicious. That night, once the entire house is asleep, he moves. Using the roof as an entry point, he sneaks inside the same building where the Russian roulette game took place. As he carefully explores, he stumbles upon an underground cellar. What he finds catches him off guard: a fresh, half-eaten plate of food. Without wasting time, he pulls out the hidden phone from his shoe and calls Susan. Her first question is whether Teresa is there. Just then, Reacher spots a bracelet. He tells Susan that Teresa isn't there, but she definitely was. Over the call, Susan insists that Teresa was definitely being held there. She asks if there's anything else, and Reacher mentions the half-eaten plate of food. This makes Susan realize that Teresa is being fed and taken care of, even if she was kidnapped. But Reacher quickly reminds her that this isn't good news. If they're keeping her alive, it's because they need her for something, and that means trouble. As the call ends, Reacher spots Duke pulling up in his car and quickly hides. Meanwhile, Susan finishes the call and storms over to Zachary's bodyguard, John Cooper, the one responsible for watching Richard. She demands answers about Teresa's whereabouts, but before things escalate, Guillermo Villanueva steps in, urging her to stay calm. Back at the estate, Reacher tries to sneak back to his room, but he overhears Duke talking to someone. The conversation seems important, so he follows quietly. When he realizes Duke is heading toward his room, he quickly changes course, deciding to climb the outside of the house instead of using the hallway. He carefully measures the exterior, slipping inside just before Duke reaches the door. Duke knocks several times, but when there's no answer, he gets suspicious and forces the door open, only to find the window wide open. Assuming Reacher has escaped, he's about to investigate further when Reacher casually steps out of the bathroom, acting like nothing happened. Duke tells him that they've gathered intel on the vehicle used in Richard's kidnapping. He orders Reacher to investigate and tells him to be downstairs in 2 minutes. Wasting no time, Reacher calls Susan and tells her to get to the location before him. His concern is simple. Beck must not find the car used in the explosion. According to their cover story, the kidnappers blew up Beck's car before trying to take Richard, killing his driver in the process. If Beck's men locate the car, they'll expect to see blood and brain matter inside. If there's none, they'll know something's off. Reacher understands the stakes. If Beck starts doubting him, the entire mission could collapse. There isn't much time left, and he urges Susan to move fast. On the way to the impound lot, Angel Doll and Reacher engage in a conversation in their car. During this conversation, Angel gives Reacher a lot of new information that he had no idea about. This is where Reacher also discovers that Angel has run a tab on him and is also aware that he was a cop in the army. Moreover, Angel reveals how he was in the army as well. Then, Angel explains how his nickname was given by his originated from his grandma, as she used to call him Angel Doll, since he won the most beautiful baby contest at the country fair. Surprised, Reacher thinks there's no way Angel can win any contest that's involved with beauty. Reacher then finds out that Beck promotes people from within, but then he also finds out that Beck is not the one pulling strings. Meanwhile, acting fast, Susan rushes to the scene along with Guillermo, determined to remove the car before Beck's men arrive. Susan goes inside the lot while Guillermo decides to keep an eye outside. From inside, Susan, at comms, tells Guillermo that this is going to take some time since she has wreckage to move. However, Susan struggles to move the car. Hearing her struggle, Guillermo offers to help, but Susan turns him down, stating that she wants him to tell her when Reacher arrives. Meanwhile, in the car, Reacher asks Angel how he is going to persuade the cop to let them inside. Angel tells Reacher that no night shift working police officer will deny a $500 bribe. However, Reacher asks what he will do if this plan doesn't work. In response, Angel just casually reveals his gun, tucked in his pants. Just as Susan's working on pushing the wrecked car out of the way, Reacher and Angel Doll arrive at the scene. Immediately, Guillermo informs Susan about it, causing her to panic. Inside, Angel attempts to bribe the officer at the reception desk to gain access and take photos of the truck. He makes up the story that his fiancée will find out that there are some belongings of another woman in his car. However, the police officer refuses the bribery, stating that it's just his second week and he doesn't want to be fired. Seeing the officer refuse, Angel slowly begins to draw his gun. Reacting instantly, Reacher knocks the police officer out with a single punch. With the immediate threat neutralized, he and Angel Doll proceed into the lot. After searching there for a few seconds, Angel finds the truck he is supposed to take pictures of. But as he's leaving, something catches his eye, a vehicle that looks exactly like Richard's car. Alarmed, he points it out to Reacher. Inspecting the car even further, Angel sees that it is wrecked in a way that seems like the truck he just took pictures of hit this car. Meanwhile, Susan is hiding beneath the car, trying to stay as quiet as possible. She's also trying to grab the screwdriver that's out in the open. Seeing her reach out to it, Reacher slides the screwdriver under the car with his leg. Moreover, because Susan had already switched the plates, Reacher smoothly dismisses the concern. He insists that it's just another car, one of many similar models in the city. Angel believes that an army cop would know things like these, so he dismisses his concern as well. Satisfied, Angel Doll drops Reacher off at Beck's home. Getting out of the car, Reacher proceeds to head into the mansion, but Angel calls him out, telling him that they are supposed to burn the car that he stole earlier. However, Reacher reasons that he is tired, so Angel decides to do it himself. Upon entering, Reacher sees that his room's door is slightly open. Just then, he notices the maid exiting his room. This immediately raises red flags. His room doesn't require cleaning, making her presence highly suspicious. So, he asks the maid if Duke asked her to search his stuff, adding that he didn't bring anything with him. The maid knows this is true because she didn't find any laundry. After a brief conversation, Reacher lets it slide for now. Attempting to rest, he lies down, but his time to rest is cut short when Zachary knocks and enters. He informs Reacher that there's work to do, then leaves. However, before heading off, Beck visits his son, assuring him that the kidnapping incident won't happen again. However, Richard explains to his father that he is scared for his life every time when he looks at himself in the mirror. Elsewhere at the gym, Reacher has a tense interaction with Paul Van Hoven, aka Paulie. Paulie inquires about Reacher's bench press numbers, but Reacher says that weightlifting is an irrelevant measure of true strength. Instead, he challenges Paulie to a game that will genuinely test their power. He explains to Paulie that Bavarian arm wrestling is the best way to prove one's strength, a game that Paulie has never heard of. However, eager to prove himself, Paulie takes the bait. Reacher then asks Paulie to place his elbow on the bench pad, then asks him to make a fist, and then asks him to use all his strength to stop him from pulling his hand down. As the both of them are using their complete strength, Reacher suddenly lets go of Paulie's hand. As a result, Paulie ends up accidentally hitting himself on the nose, but Reacher quickly reasons that his hand slipped. This makes Polly even angrier as the two get ready to take each other's lives. But before things escalate further, Duke arrives and intervenes, putting a stop to the fight. Duke then assigns Reacher a job. He must transport a truck to a drop-off location in New London, Connecticut. The vehicle will be tracked via GPS, meaning Reacher can't take any detours. He is also strictly forbidden from inspecting the cargo. Moreover, Reacher is also forbidden from taking a coffee break. The only break he is allowed is when he needs to use the restroom. Sensing this might be another test, Reacher contacts Susan. He explains that they need to determine what's inside the truck without raising suspicion. Susan thinks that it might be possible that Reacher is carrying Teresa in his truck without them knowing. Just then, Reacher reveals that he is on a timeline and that they must hurry. So they agree to meet at a gas station where Susan's team can discreetly examine the shipment while making it look like Reacher is just stopping for coffee. Before ending the phone call, Susan deactivates the speaker mode and appreciates Reacher for job well done in the impound lot. After his phone call with Susan, Reacher contacts Neagley, an old friend of his. There, he asks for her help. When she agrees, Reacher explains that he wants her to run jackets on a few names. He asks her to get more details about Polly, Angel, and Duke, giving her their full names. Reacher then tells Neagley that he is going to call her in a day or two to hear what she has found out. But Neagley tells him that she is just going to call him. However, Reacher tells Neagley that he can't be talking with his allies since he is on an undercover mission. When Neagley tries to ask Reacher who he is going after this time, he ends the call. Once they all reach the gas station, Guillermo unlocks the truck, finding out that there are rugs only. Soon, Susan's friend Dick Grunert arrives with his canine dog named Pfizer. However, after a thorough search, they find no signs of drugs or nothing. The truck is completely empty. Thereafter, Reacher tells Susan to ask Dick if Teresa's body might be there, but Dick explains that Pfizer would have smelled if there was a body, dead or alive. This confirms Reacher's suspicion. It's not about smuggling, this is a loyalty test. So, he decides to quickly head back to the road, so as to not raise any more suspicions. As they are en route, Susan asks Reacher why he told her that she is not ready to see Teresa's body inside the truck. Reacher explains that he once was working with a child, and she was the same as Teresa. But then something happened to her, so bad that Reacher cannot put in his words. Reacher drops Susan off at Guillermo's and heads straight to the meeting spot. He pulls up, hands over the truck, and watches as the guy checks the back. When all he finds are rugs, Reacher plays along, acting surprised. They tell him to hop in another truck and take off for the warehouse. When he gets back, Angel Doll, the same guy from before, is waiting. This time, he's got questions. He doesn't trust Reacher and makes it clear that he's suspicious. He thinks Reacher is lying about who he is. Reacher doesn't wait for things to get worse. Before Angel can do anything, Reacher grabs his head and slams it into the table, killing him in one move. He drags the body under the table, making it look normal. Then he steps outside. Duke is already there, honking. When Duke asks what took so long, Reacher just says Angel wouldn't stop talking. Duke drives Reacher back to Beck's mansion and brings up Angel Doll's call to Beck, saying there's news. Reacher acts like he didn't hear anything important, but Duke says Angel left a voicemail. Dropping Reacher off, Duke mentions he has things to take care of while Reacher is off duty. In the kitchen, Reacher washes Angel's blood off his hands. Annette hands him a strong cleaner that Rusty, the mechanic, uses. While eating, he brings up Beck's mechanic, wondering why he needs one when all his cars are new. Annette says she doesn't ask questions and mentions Beck's upcoming 50th birthday party. Duke comes in, puts away Reacher's dishes, and says Beck has questions about Angel's voicemail. Since Angel isn't answering his phone, Duke orders Reacher to come along. With no chance to grab a weapon, Reacher follows. In Beck's office, Beck says Angel's message links the pickup truck's plates to a familiar group, but Reacher's description of the kidnapper doesn't match anyone from there. Beck starts doubting him, but Reacher suggests the group might have hired new people. He pushes for more details, but Beck refuses and sends him to his room. Reacher uses a hidden phone in his boot heel to call Neagley. She says Polly once injured 2 superiors in the military and met Angel in the brig while serving time for sexual assault. She also reveals Duke used to be a cop and offers to help, but Reacher turns her down, saying the target is too dangerous. When he mentions the target is someone he thought he killed years ago, Neagley immediately guesses Quinn and demands to know where he is. Reacher hangs up, knowing the call is untraceable. He then calls Duffy, asking her to leave a car with clothes and a towel nearby after midnight. Until then, he naps. At midnight, he strips to his underwear and swims along the coast. Duffy waits by the car and texts Guillermo saying Reacher isn't there yet. Just then, a soaking wet and nearly naked Reacher walks out of the woods, startling her. She hands him the bag of clothes. raising an eyebrow as he changes. Getting into the driver's seat, she insists on staying to search for Teresa. On the way, Reacher explains their plan to make Beck believe the kidnappers won't return. He also remembers a barn, wind chimes, and a creaking door, then tells her about Sergeant First Class Dominique Cole, his friend. At the warehouse, they climb over the fence and razor wire. Inside, Reacher shows her Angel doll's corpse. She stays calm, takes Angel's laptop, and unlocks it with his fingerprint. They find nothing on Teresa, frustrating Duffy, but at least now they know she isn't there. Looking outside, Reacher spots several shipping containers near the train tracks. They put Angel's body in the trunk of one of Beck's cars and drive it into container 13. Reacher takes Angel's gun before locking it. While cleaning up the blood, a truck arrives. Reacher sees Bellinger and Sklar step out and knows they'll shoot on sight. He and Duffy hide, then ambush them with a crowbar and a bat, killing them. They hide the bodies in container 14 before Duffy drives Reacher back to the road. He puts Angel's gun in a bag, strips to his underwear again, and swims back to Beck's estate. Duffy turns her back, but when he hands her the clothes, she sneaks another glance. They part ways, and he swims back, hiding Angel's gun among the rocks before heading inside. In the morning, Beck is panicked about 2 missing drivers. Reacher offers to help, so Beck tells him to take Richard into town for shopping. As they leave, Reacher speeds past the gatehouse, forcing Paulie to jump aside. Richard warns him not to mess with Paulie, calling him a psycho. Reacher asks why Beck lets a psycho live in his house, and Richard explains that McCabe is really in charge, not his father. He says McCabe is even worse than Paulie. When Reacher asks about Beck and McCabe's business, Richard insists that Bizarre Bazaar only sells rugs. At a toy store, Richard buys a vintage toy gun for his father's birthday. While Richard is inside, Reacher calls Duffy and tells her a big order is coming in. He says he needs a promotion to Duke's position, so Duke has to be removed. Duffy sends Beck a fake message from Angel to set a trap. Meanwhile, Richard leaves the store with his shopping bag but runs into 3 former high school classmates. The lead one takes his bag and stomps on it, breaking the toy gun inside. Reacher arrives and warns them to leave Richard alone, but when they refuse, he fights the trio and leaves them on the ground. At the shipping yards, Duffy and Guillermo spot Beck's trucks departing with cargo from Slip 7. Duffy reviews the manifest on Angel's laptop and accidentally lets it slip that Reacher kills Angel. They follow the trucks. Back in town, Reacher holds the 2 broken pieces of the toy gun together as Richard emerges from an ice cream parlor with 2 cones. Reacher suggests that some epoxy should fix the toy. Richard hands him a cone of lavender-infused ice cream, but Reacher throws his away. Richard opens up about being bullied all his life and wanting to run away. Reacher, unable to empathize, tells him that if he truly wants to live the hobo life, he will help him, but only if Richard is honest about Beck's business. Richard hesitates, afraid that if anyone finds out he talks, they will come after him. Reacher assures him that he will keep him safe. Trusting him, Richard finally confesses that Julius McCabe now runs his father's business and controls every aspect of their lives. McCabe orchestrates the first kidnapping and is responsible for cutting off Richard's ear, though it is Paulie who does the cutting. Beck's business, rather than just importing rugs, is more about circumventing regulations. Reacher speculates that McCabe is using Beck's network to smuggle drugs. Richard isn't certain about the exact contents being shipped. At the docks, Duffy and Guillermo capture surveillance photos of Beck's men unloading the trucks, with Paulie overseeing the process. A car arrives, and Julius McCabe steps out. Duffy calls Stephen to relay what they've seen. Leaving Cooper unattended, Stephen steps away to talk. Meanwhile, Cooper notices the sharp point on the back of the chair, deliberately leans back, and gouges the back of his head. When Stephen returns, Cooper complains about the pain and persuades him to clean the wound. He attempts to bond with Stephen, but the agent remains wary and returns to watching TV. Cooper then eyes the bottle of rubbing alcohol on the table with a contemplative expression. Reacher and Richard return to Beck's estate and notice that the gate is left open. Paulie is not at his usual post in the gatehouse. Beck and Duke are preparing to leave just as they arrive. Richard heads inside while Duke places a bag in the trunk. Beck informs Reacher that Angel sends them an address in Hartford and that they are heading out immediately to eliminate the supposed would-be kidnappers. Reacher stalls, saying he needs to use the bathroom. Once inside, he sneaks out through the kitchen entrance to grab Angel's gun. Meeting Beck and Duke out front, he listens as Beck promises a bonus if he does well on this job. On the way, Beck mentions that the ice cream shop owner called about what Reacher did to the bullies. Duke says Richard needs to toughen up, but Reacher couldn't care less about his opinion. They reach the address under the cover of darkness. Beck orders them to wipe out the entire gang. As Duke and Reacher approach the safe house, Reacher convinces him the house only looks dark and abandoned because the gang wants them to think no one's inside. Duke insists on going in first and kicks the door open. Reacher takes the chance to disarm him and demands to know where Teresa is. Duke refuses to talk, saying McCabe will kill him if he does, and laughs at the idea that Reacher would do anything to him. Without hesitation, Reacher shoots him in the head. Knowing Beck is waiting outside, listening for signs of a fight, Reacher fires all the guns into the walls. Then he smashes himself in the face with the pistol butt to make it look like a real battle. He loads the microwave with aerosol cans, sets the timer for 30 seconds, and bolts out. The house explodes into a fireball. Reacher sprints back to the car and tells Beck to drive. As they escape, he reports Duke is dead, claiming they were ambushed. He hands Beck Angel's gun, saying one of the attackers must have dropped it. Beck immediately recognizes it and decides Angel was a traitor. Reacher subtly suggests the two missing drivers were also part of the ambush. Satisfied, Beck says Reacher has earned his bonus and promotes him to Duke's position as second in command. On the way back to Beck's house, Beck calls Julius McCabe to tell him that Angel Doll betrayed him and that Duke is dead. After the call, he tells Reacher who McCabe is. Meanwhile, at the cabin, Duffy and Guillermo look through surveillance photos of McCabe's operation. When a car pulls up, they grab their guns and move toward the door. Reacher walks in and tells them everything in Hartford went as planned. Duffy is upset that the DEA safe house got destroyed, and Guillermo is angry that Reacher killed Duke just to take his place. Duffy shows Reacher a picture of McCabe, and Reacher is shocked. McCabe is actually Quinn, the man he thought he had already killed. Guillermo tries to find more information on Julius McCabe but finds nothing. Duffy demands to know why Reacher wants Quinn dead, but he stays silent. She keeps pushing him for an answer. The story then shifts to a flashback. In the past, Reacher was a solo military police investigator. General Leon Garber checks in on a case and tells Reacher that Sergeant First Class Dominique Cole will assist him because he has too much work. Garber also mentions an early version of what will later become the 110th Unit. When Cole arrives, she reports for duty, and Reacher tells her to just call him Reacher. As he explains the case, he notices her looking around and asks what's wrong. She says she has heard about his strict but fair reputation, and correctly guesses that he only just found out about her assignment. Reacher confirms this and gives her the case file while he gets coffee. As he pours, he asks why she thinks Gorowski is selling blueprints. She immediately suggests that he was forced into it. He's in his 40s, has no criminal history, and has a family, so he doesn't seem like the type to do it willingly. Impressed, Reacher orders a second chair for her. Later, they stake out Gorowski's dead drop in a park. While waiting, Cole shares that she used to hunt elk with her father, who died 5 years ago, but she still goes hunting. Reacher briefly talks about his own father. When the pickup takes too long, they step out of the car and realize they've been watching the wrong garbage can. The real drop happened at another can 30 yards away. Reacher decides to bring Gorowski in for questioning and bluff him. During Cole's interrogation, Gorowski confesses that he gave up the blueprints because criminals kidnapped his 4-year-old daughter to prove they could control him. Watching from the observation room, Reacher is impressed by Cole's skills. Gorowski refuses to name anyone, scared for his family's safety, but Cole warns him that the criminals will keep using him until they don't need him anymore. Then, they'll probably kill him and his family. Finally, Gorowski whispers the name Xavier Quinn. He explains that Quinn works in military intelligence and has law enforcement contacts who would warn him if Gorowski talked. Back in the present, Duffy points out that Quinn is using the same tactic on Beck, kidnapping and threats. Guillermo asks how Reacher and Cole handle it. The story shifts back to the past, where Cole goes through Quinn's file and discovers his background and a hidden $500,000 in Aruba. Private Anthony Frasconi then arrives with phone records showing that Quinn has been calling Safwan Qasim, a Syrian national with military connections. The three of them wait outside a club, and while they stake it out, Reacher explains what they can and can't do to Qasim without making Quinn suspicious. From the back seat, Frasconi casually mentions that he enjoys dancing, and Reacher notices that he has a crush on Cole as he awkwardly tries to make his case. When Cole spots Qasim and his security detail leaving the club, they follow them into an alley and approach Qasim, asking for a conversation. After scaring off his security guards, Reacher convinces Qasim to help them take down Quinn, and Cole takes him into custody. Before leaving, Reacher holds Frasconi back and gives him advice on staying safe in combat and some guidance on how to approach Cole personally. In the cabin, Agent Steven interrupts Duffy and Reacher, asking if he can let Cooper have a smoke. Duffy reminds him about the rules on how to treat detainees and sends him back to watch their prisoner. The story returns to the past, where Reacher and Cole meet with General Matsuda, explaining that they need him to authenticate the blueprints as soon as Quinn hands them to Qasim. Matsuda agrees and wishes them luck. Later, Cole suggests going to a bar for a drink while they review the file, but Reacher says it wouldn't look right. Instead, he grabs 2 beers from his fridge and they drink in his office. During the sting operation, Reacher explains how Quinn and Qasim exchange money for the blueprints while Frasconi secretly records it. Frasconi follows Quinn while Qasim gives the blueprints to Reacher and Cole. Back at the office, Cole checks the blueprints and confirms they are real. She lists everything needed to arrest. Reacher tells her she does great and deserves to make the arrest. In the present, Reacher tells Duffy and Guillermo that very few people are truly exceptional, able to think clearly, solve problems, act with integrity, and know when to be serious or lighten the mood. Dominique Cole is one of those rare people, and Reacher believes she has a bright future. An hour later, Garber gives Reacher a coffee and reassures him that Cole is probably on her way. But Reacher notices it's been 49 minutes. Garber suggests texting her, but Reacher doesn't like texting. Still, he sends a message asking if she's okay. She replies that Quinn is cuffed and she's heading in, but the way she writes her makes Reacher realize something is wrong. He quickly leads a team to Quinn's house and finds Fresconi dead. However, Cole is missing, and signs show Quinn takes her alive. At HQ, Garber pulls up Quinn's juvenile record, showing he is a violent sociopath. Reacher knows Quinn will torture Cole. They figure out he takes her to his farmhouse. Without waiting, Reacher drives there, telling Garber to call once he has the exact address. When Garber calls back, Reacher estimates that he is 20 minutes away. Garber has already contacted the county police, but they are 30 minutes out. Reacher simply says it doesn't matter. He has no plans to arrest Quinn. Garber tells Reacher to take care of Quinn properly. When Reacher arrives at the property, he finds the house door locked but sees a light in the barn. As the door creaks in the wind and chimes jingle softly, memories flood his mind. Inside the barn, he sees Cole hanging by her tied hands from a rafter, her bare feet dangling, blood running down her legs and dripping from her toes. Overwhelmed with grief, he turns and walks out, barely noticing her uniform on the floor. A noise catches his attention, and he creeps around to a sub-level door. Looking through the window, he sees Quinn digging through grain bins, stuffing money into bags. Quinn hears a jingle and turns toward the door, noticing a chain of bells hanging there. The moment he steps outside, Reacher catches him off guard, puts a gun to his head, and takes his weapon. Quinn tries to talk his way out, claiming he and Cole have been partners, but she gets greedy, forcing him to kill her. He even admits to the murder and tries to cut a deal. Reacher ignores him and asks what Cole's first name is. When Quinn gets it wrong, his lie is exposed. He lunges at Reacher, but Reacher punches him and forces him at gunpoint to a cliffside overlooking rough waters. Reacher tells Quinn that Cole's first name is Dominique, then shoots him in the head, sending him over the edge. Later, in the cabin, Reacher explains that he uses Quinn's .22, but the bullet is too small to kill him instantly. A flashback shows Reacher taking Cole's body down, covering her with a blanket, and kneeling beside her until the police arrive. When they ask where Quinn is, Reacher simply says he has no idea. In the present, Guillermo nods. He is dead serious, says they're taking Quinn down for real this time. Duffy looks uneasy. Reacher notices. She exhales hard, admits she forces Teresa undercover. Prison time hanging over her head like a blade. Guilt's eating her alive. Reacher don't judge, just tells her he's pulled the same move before. Back at Beck's estate, Reacher sits in the kitchen, crushing some takeout. Asks for coffee. Agnes pours, eyes locked on him. Wants to know about Duke. Reacher keeps it cold. Duke ain't working for Beck no more. Annette chimes in, checking if he's holding up. He just says it's been one hell of a night. She nods. Says they've been busy setting up Beck's big birthday bash. That gets his attention. Guest list. He asks. Casual. Agnes hands over the coffee. He nods. Steps out. Next morning, Annette knocks on his door, holding a bag of fresh clothes. He cracks it open, standing there in his boxers. She clocks it. Don't say a word. He throws on the fit, but outside, noise catches his ear. Richard's out by the carriage house, swinging on a heavy bag. Reacher strolls up, tells him to hit him. Full force. Richard sighs. Swings. Weak. Reacher ain't impressed. Starts teaching. Fighting ain't about power. It's about playing dirty. From the house, Zachary Beck watches. Then his phone goes off. Somewhere else, Guillermo and Duffy sit in a car. Guillermo's got doubts about Reacher. Duffy don't answer, just pulls up Angel Doll's laptop, tracking Teresa's location. First stop, a tubing facility. Duffy picks the lock. Back at Beck's estate, things turn quick. Beck yanks Reacher aside, tension thick. McCabe's got a hit. Angel Doll's laptop pinged at the tubing joint. 3 men already sent to clean house. Reacher is riding shotgun, ordered to put bodies in the ground. In the way, Reacher dials Duffy. Voicemail. He drops a message. Inside the facility, Guillermo checks his phone. No signal. Duffy don't like that. Steel roofs messing with reception. Outside, McCabe's men pull up. Locked, loaded, ready to kill. Reacher drives to the tubing facility and calls Agent Steven at the cabin to check on Duffy and Guillermo. He tells Steven that McCabe's men are searching for Angel Doll's laptop, but Duffy and Guillermo aren't answering their phones. Steven quickly looks up the company's phone number. At the facility, McCabe's men enter with their guns ready. Harley spots Duffy near the office door and signals Carnes and Rusty to move in. When the phone rings, Duffy realizes no one should be calling if the facility is closed. Seeing that her phone still has no signal, she answers anyway. Steven urgently warns her that McCabe's men are coming. Gunfire breaks out as Duffy and Guillermo take cover and fire back. Outside, Reacher hears the shots and runs into Rusty. Rusty signals a plan, and Reacher nods. But when Rusty turns away, Reacher shoots him in the head. Carnes fires at Duffy, but she drops, shoots him in the leg, and moves in to finish him, leaving her badge on the floor. She then aims at Harley, but Reacher stops her, whispering that if he's the only survivor again, it will look suspicious. They need to let Harley live. Reacher tells her and Guillermo to escape and throw the laptop out the window. As they flee, Reacher grabs her badge, climbs onto the crates for a better view, and fires at Harley to slow him down. Duffy and Guillermo speed away and toss the laptop out the window. Harley rushes outside, shooting at their car. Reacher pulls up in one of Beck's Audis and tells Harley he's Duke's replacement, urging him to get in. Once inside, Reacher drives into a mud pit, making the Audi get stuck, and tells Harley to get out and push. Spotting the laptop nearby, Harley reports to McCabe, describing Duffy and Guillermo as federal agents. Frustrated, McCabe hangs up. Harley looks at Reacher and says their boss is angry, which is never a good thing. Later, Guillermo buys beers outside a restaurant and toasts their survival. Duffy, still upset over not finding Teresa, recalls a case where a missing boy was found alive long after being presumed dead. She insists Guillermo must believe like she does or stay silent. He nods, subdued by her determination. Back at Beck's estate, Reacher and Harley arrive at the gatehouse. Harley tries to get Paulie to help with a task, but Paulie refuses. After getting inside, Reacher pushes a wheelbarrow with Carnes' body to the shoreline, while Harley reminisces about past disposals. Reacher carries Carnes to the top opening of a tidal cove and throws him in, letting the undertow carry him out to sea. They return for Rusty's body and dispose of him the same way. Afterward, Harley warns Reacher that Paulie will want revenge for the prank in the weight room. Later, Reacher calls Duffy, who is now driving alone after dropping Guillermo at the cabin to get his car. They plan to split up and check addresses from Angel Doll's laptop, including a crate manufacturer and an industrial lubricant supplier. Reacher tells her he has her badge. Outside, Beck summons Reacher to the kitchen, where McCabe's men, Howitt and Tank, are waiting. As Agnes serves Reacher coffee, she casually mentions that the beans were processed by a cat's digestive system. While he processes that unsettling fact, Howitt makes a crude remark to Annette and tries to escalate the situation. Reacher swiftly takes him down, smashing his head into the table, then checks if Tank wants to challenge him. Tank quickly backs down. Later, Reacher hides Duffy's badge in his pillowcase. A knock at the door reveals a tray with a slice of pie and a note reading, "Mercy." At the cabin, Cooper tricks Stephen into giving him a cigarette and then inhales a mouthful of rubbing alcohol. As Stephen flicks the lighter, Cooper blows the alcohol into his face, setting him on fire. He rushes Stephen, stomps him to death, unlocks his cuffs, and takes his coat. Before leaving, he places a cigarette in his mouth and sarcastically thanks Stephen's corpse for the smoke. Duffy arrives at the cabin while on a call with Guillermo. Noticing the open door, she cautiously enters and discovers Stephen's body, screaming in rage. Reacher, brushing his teeth, hears his phone buzz. Duffy informs him that Stephen is dead and Cooper has escaped. Since Cooper doesn't have a phone, Reacher deduces that he is heading for Beck. Checking Stephen's smartwatch, Duffy determines Cooper escaped 10 minutes ago. Reacher tells Duffy she needs to give him a reason to leave the compound. He then calls Guillermo, who is en route to the cabin, and instructs him to drive to the blind turn on the way to Beck's house, park the car, and empty it to make it as light as possible. Guillermo, confused, asks what's going on, and Reacher informs him that Cooper killed Stephen. Guillermo immediately accelerates. Meanwhile, Duffy drives up to a power transformer, pulls her gun, and fires at it until it blows, knocking out power across Beck's compound. Paulie steps out of the gatehouse with a flashlight, finds Beck and Reacher inside, and reports the outage. Reacher suggests it could be a precursor to an attack and volunteers to go down the road to stop any potential threats. Beck calls McCabe to update him, and McCabe orders a full search of the house and staff. Beck passes the order to Harley, Tank, and Howitt, who wake the staff and search their rooms. Outside, Guillermo has emptied his car when Reacher arrives and instructs him to move it into the middle of the road so they can flip it over. Once done, Reacher tells him to lie inside to force Cooper to exit his car and approach. Inside the house, Harley searches Reacher's room, and Duffy's badge is visible, hanging off the bed in the pillowcase. Lying on his back inside the overturned car, Guillermo chuckles to himself. Reacher asks what's so funny, and Guillermo says he's laughing because he feels like he's living the classic story of a cop getting killed right before retirement. Reacher figures Cooper will stop before hitting the car. Just as expected, Cooper rounds the corner, brakes, and comes to a stop. He gets out and crouches next to Guillermo, who opens his eyes and says, "This is for Stephen," right before Reacher shoots Cooper in the head. A little later, Reacher calls Duffy just as she finishes telling Stephen's father about his son's death. He tells her Cooper is dead too. She has already made up a cover story to keep the DEA off their backs, but plans to tell the truth once they find Teresa. Back at Beck's place, Reacher notices the gatehouse is empty. Inside the house, a machine gun hangs from the ceiling, swinging from chains, and everything is eerily quiet. Following the sound of voices, he enters Beck's study where Beck, Polly, and Harley are waiting. Reacher reports that a drunk driver hit a power transformer, which caused the outage. Beck tells him that while he was gone, McCabe ordered a full search of the house. When Reacher asks if they found anything, Beck starts talking about a traitor in his home working with the feds. Sensing trouble, Reacher quietly reaches for a metal alarm clock behind him. Beck opens a desk drawer and pulls out a small phone, identical to Reacher's, which was found in Annette's room. She had been sending intel to the ATF every 2 weeks. Reacher offers to interrogate her, but Harley informs him that Polly already killed her. Reacher confronts Polly and punches him in the gut, but it has no effect. Polly retaliates, hitting Reacher so hard that he collapses. Richard, stepping into the doorway, watches as Reacher struggles to rise. Later, as Reacher and Harley head to retrieve Annette's body, Harley complains that he had planned to spend the weekend on his boat, but now has to pick up the slack left by Angel Doll's absence. Irritated, Reacher punches him in the stomach hard enough to make him vomit. That night, Richard checks in on Reacher and accuses him of being afraid of Polly. Reacher denies it, stating that he simply hasn't figured Polly out yet. He then calls Duffy to report that Annette was ATF, which means Beck and McCabe are running guns, not drugs. The puzzle pieces click into place. Beck's full-time mechanic, the industrial lubricant supplier. Beck isn't dealing drugs. He's moving untraceable firearms. McCabe's major sale is approaching, and his client could be any number of criminal organizations. The next morning, Beck finds Reacher sitting on his bed, having not slept. McCabe has called them to the warehouse, and Beck, still covered in Annette's blood, suggests cleaning up first. Meanwhile, Duffy and Guillermo leave Dinkies with coffees and takeout bags when Reacher calls to tell them about his summons. Duffy immediately figures out that he's about to meet Quinn and tells him to keep his phone on so she and Guillermo can back him up. As they talk, Reacher tells her Teresa is already dead, but Duffy doesn't respond. He leaves his phone on and heads out. On the way, he and Beck guess how the meeting might go. Duffy and Guillermo are already in position, watching the warehouse before they arrive. Inside, crates of weapons are being checked. Beck looks at Reacher and asks if he's ready to meet the boss. Reacher grips the gun in his waistband and simply says he's been waiting for this moment for a long time. Reacher and Beck are in McCabe's warehouse, surrounded by guys handling weapons. Reacher has a gun tucked in his waistband and a phone in his pocket, left on so Duffy and Guillermo can listen. McCabe storms in, pissed that Beck hired an ATF agent to clean his house. He threatens to kill Beck, worried he'll mess everything up, but admits the buyers still expect to deal with him. Outside, a car pulls up. Duffy notices a guy carrying a green dress in a garment bag, fresh from a tailor. She figures it's for Teresa, meaning she's still alive. Inside, McCabe walks up to Reacher, saying hiring him was the smartest thing Beck has done in weeks. He asks for Reacher's name but doesn't recognize it, then introduces himself. Reacher notices the dress, and McCabe smirks, saying it's nothing compared to what's going on. He mentions the girl, saying she'd already be dead if she wasn't a redhead, which happens to be the client's preference. Loud honking fills the warehouse as a motorcade arrives. McCabe tells Reacher to stand behind him and look intimidating, warning the others not to draw their weapons unless he does first. Outside, Taktarov sits in his car, finishing a call. McCabe tells him the bag being placed in his trunk is just a small payment, not the full amount. Taktarov reminds him that wasn't the deal. McCabe apologizes, saying the sale got delayed. Taktarov throws out a Russian proverb, and McCabe translates it. Give a man a fingernail, he'll take the forearm. After Taktarov and his cars drive off, McCabe tells Harley to find out who's been looking into him. On the way back to Beck's house, Beck tells Reacher that McCabe borrowed money from the Russian mob. Reacher makes it clear McCabe has to pay on time, or he's dead. Meanwhile, Duffy and Guillermo visit the dressmaker, who says he was hired to make a sexy dress for a redhead. He doesn't know the client's name, but hands over a contact number. At Beck's carriage house, Reacher spots Richard walking toward the water after sending a message on his phone. Reacher follows and convinces him to come into town for epoxy to fix a toy gun he got for his dad's birthday. Richard hesitates but agrees. Reacher drops him off at the shops, saying he's grabbing coffee. Instead, he meets Duffy in an alley and hands back her badge. She says they got a phone number from the dressmaker. No one answered, but Guillermo has a contact at the cell provider who can check the call logs. Reacher tells her about Taktarov and McCabe's debt to the Russian mob. Duffy thanks him for not killing McCabe Quinn when he had the chance. Reacher explains why, and she kisses him. He kisses back, but she suddenly pulls away, saying it won't happen again. He doesn't get it. Then Guillermo arrives, loudly saying he had to move the car. Reacher is surprised to see him, and warns Duffy to get Guillermo out of there now. She doesn't understand until Richard walks into the alley and recognizes Guillermo as the cop Reacher supposedly killed. On the way back to Beck's, Richard demands the truth. Reacher pulls over, yanks him out, and holds him still so he'll listen. He apologizes for lying, but explains that he was recruited to find Teresa and plans to kill McCabe. At Beck's house, Agnes brings in tuxedos for Richard and Reacher. Beck asks her to check Annette's old room for the RSVP guest list. After she leaves, Richard and Reacher enter, and Beck notices something is off with Richard. Richard lies, saying town bullies were bothering him again, but that Reacher handled it. As Reacher is about to leave, Beck accuses him of trying to be Richard's father. Reacher says he's just looking out for the kid, just as he looks out for Beck. It's his job. Beck warns that people in that job get shot a lot. In Rock Creek, Virginia, an elderly neighbor knocks on Warrant Officer Powell's door, asking if his water pressure is okay. Powell opens the door to find the neighbor being held at gunpoint by two of McCabe's men. They shoot the old man and turn their guns on Powell. One of them calls McCabe, reporting that Powell has been captured and that their team in Chicago will move soon. In Chicago, in Neagley's office, she gets up to make a hot drink, leaving her sidearm on her desk. Meanwhile, in the elevator, two men attach silencers to their weapons. The elevator dings when they arrive. The men check her office first, but the microwave beeps, revealing that she's in the kitchen. One of them heads there, but Neagley ambushes him, knocking him to the ground. Neagley hides under some desks and logs into a computer, sending a print job to the photocopier. The noise distracts both men, drawing them to the copier room, giving her a chance to run back to her office. They chase her, shooting, but their bullets miss and shatter the glass wall instead. She grabs her gun and shoots one of them. Taking her phone and a fresh clip, she tracks the other guy to the kitchen. Meanwhile, McCabe's goons are beating Powell, while McCabe watches over video chat. Seeing Powell won't talk, McCabe orders them to cut him open and let him bleed out. In Chicago, Neagley finds the second man sitting on the kitchen floor, holding his stomach where she shot him. He asks her to call 911, but she scoffs and eats a bowl of cereal instead. When he begs for a doctor, she tells him if he gives up the name of who hired him, she might call someone. He confesses they were sent by Kostopoulos because she was investigating Angel Doll and Polly. Neagley calls Reacher to tell him what happened, but realizing McCabe is hunting down everyone he worked with, he hangs up. She then calls an ambulance but informs the injured man it'll arrive in 5 minutes. He'll be dead in 1. At the 110th Investigators, Wade picks up Reacher's call. Learning Powell is 30 minutes late for his shift, Reacher tells her to send 3 armed officers to check his house. Meanwhile, Beck is in Richard's studio, looking at a painting when he notices a fast-moving car entering the property. McCabe, Polly, and others enter the house. Beck meets them in the foyer, where McCabe accuses him of being involved with 2 military members from the 110th Special Investigators. Beck admits Reacher was part of the 110th. McCabe then orders Polly to kill Reacher. Polly finds Reacher's room empty. Looking outside, he spots Reacher running across the lawn. Reacher rushes to the carriage house, grabs the snowplow keys, and shoots the tires of all other vehicles. As Polly and Harley approach, Reacher bursts out in the snowplow, smashing through a garage door. He speeds away, dodging machine gun fire from the gatehouse. At their hotel, Duffy and Guillermo discuss the case. Reacher calls Duffy, telling her to pick him up because his ride was shot out. Before he can explain, McCabe's men chase him on ATVs. Running into the woods, Reacher shoots one rider and disables the lights on 2 ATVs. Using mud for camouflage, he sneaks up on one guy and breaks his neck. The next gets stabbed in the throat, while the last is killed using an ATV's retracting cable. Reacher then emerges near town and heads to a laundromat, offering the elderly owners cash to close early. Meanwhile, Polly finds his dead men in the woods. He enters town searching for Reacher, but has no clue where he's hiding. Frustrated, he heads back. In the laundromat, Reacher waits for his clothes in just a small towel. The owners kindly bring him a wet cloth to clean up and a cup of coffee. He thanks them, joking that it's better than the usual bad coffee. At Beck's house, Polly leans in and whispers to McCabe. McCabe nods and orders Richard to be brought downstairs. Beck tries to argue, but McCabe grabs a revolver, empties the chambers, and places it on the table with a single bullet. Beck steps forward, but Polly shuts him up by aiming a gun at Richard's head. Richard picks up the revolver and points it at Polly, but McCabe tells him the odds aren't in his favor. He's got a 20% chance of killing Polly, while Polly will definitely kill Beck. Richard looks at his father, then turns the gun on himself and pulls the trigger. Nothing happens. McCabe tells him to do it again. Richard obeys. Beck panics, offering McCabe anything, but McCabe just laughs and says he wants a matching set of ears. At the hotel, Reacher, Duffy, and Guillermo go over their findings. Guillermo's phone company contact pulls up a number from Port Rome. Reacher recognizes it as Harley's. That means Teresa is on his boat. Reacher and Duffy swim out and search below deck. They don't find her, but they see clear signs she was there, tied up and drugged. Outside, a motorboat approaches. Harley steps onto the deck, spots water on the floor, and pulls his gun. As he moves below deck, Duffy grabs his arm. The shot goes off, hitting a lantern. Flames spread fast. Harley tries to run, but they chase him back onto the deck. Duffy pounds him while Reacher dumps more flammable liquid below. Harley refuses to talk, so Reacher stabs his foot with a fish gaff. As the fire rages, Harley finally cracks. McCabe moved Teresa and changed the time and location of the weapon sale. That's all they need. They hop onto the motorboat and leave Harley to go up in flames with his boat. Back at the marina, they change out of their wetsuits. Reacher smirks, teasing Duffy about sneaking peeks at him. She rolls her eyes, annoyed, then asks what they're supposed to do now that their last lead just exploded. He grins and tells her to pack sunscreen. They're heading to Los Angeles. In Boston, Duffy drives Reacher to see Teresa's grandmother, Mrs. Daniel. They have breakfast with her and share a deep conversation before heading to the airport, determined to find Teresa. Meanwhile, in Chicago, Neagley catches a man named Kostopoulos off guard while he's grabbing his newspaper in his bathrobe. He's the one who sent killers after her, and under pressure, he quickly confesses that Julius McCabe ordered the hit. When Neagley brings up the name Xavier Quinn, Kostopoulos turns pale. Hardly anyone knows about him. Years ago, Quinn ran an export business in Chicago, but when the owners refused to work with him, he wiped them out and took over. Later, he moved his operation to Bizarre Bazaar. Kostopoulos figures Quinn is tying up loose ends before relocating again, meaning the Becks are next. Neagley decks him and walks away. In Los Angeles, Reacher and Duffy go over hidden footage of a drug lord named Darien. His enemies keep disappearing thanks to weapons from Beck and Quinn. Duffy and Elliot had tracked Darien for days, noticing how predictable his routine was. Reacher spots something in the footage and tells Duffy to zoom in. She doesn't get it at first, but Reacher says it proves they've got him. He makes a call for backup, and Duffy gets hyped, comparing it to when she exposed her cheating ex. She asks if this helps with Maine. Reacher says if things go right, they have a 25% shot at success. She presses him on whether that means taking down Quinn or saving Teresa. Reacher assures her that after meeting Mrs. Daniel and seeing Duffy's dedication, Teresa's rescue won't come second to Quinn's downfall. Impressed by Reacher's words, Duffy suddenly pulls off her shirt and kisses him. Her earlier protests don't matter anymore. Now she really knows who he is. They end up in bed together. Later, they track Darien to a poolside club and convince him to go for a ride. They take him to his gallery, where he insists his business is legit. Reacher brings up the federal 3 strikes law. 3 violent felonies mean life in prison. Darien already has 2. In the surveillance footage, Reacher noticed him parking in a handicapped spot with a doctor's placard. They found the doctor, who admitted he was threatened into faking Darien's knee arthritis diagnosis. That counts as extortion, making it a 3rd strike. Darien protests that he never threatened the doctor. Reacher admits the doctor denied it too, but when faced with losing his medical license, he will say whatever they want. Darien realizes Reacher and Duffy are using extortion against him. Reacher tells him they just need a favor. Darien calls Beck and demands a weapons shipment, saying he'll send a man from Baltimore with the payment. After hanging up, he orders Reacher and Duffy to leave, but Duffy makes a call and DEA agents flood in. While Reacher and Duffy won't pursue the parking pass fraud, the DEA accountants will tear apart Darien's gallery finances. Realizing he's doomed, Darien surrenders. Duffy cheers and points out Rhonda's face on the screen, still amused by her ex's betrayal. Back in Portland, Maine, Reacher and Duffy reunite with Guillermo and stake out the usual exchange site between Beck and Darien. Beck arrives with a bandage over his right ear. Neagley steps out of another car, posing as Darien's man from Baltimore. When Beck approaches, she warns him to pretend they are making a gun deal for his guard's sake. She reveals Reacher sent her and warns that if he doesn't cooperate, both he and Richard are dead. She demands details about the big buy, hoping to stop Quinn before he eliminates them. Beck admits Quinn changed the plan and didn't share it with him. His only instructions are to focus on his birthday party, which Quinn won't let him cancel. Neagley sees no use in him and turns to leave. Beck stops her, desperate for help to escape with Richard. She tells him they can't help unless he helps them first. He then reveals that buyers from Yemen are flying in that day to a private airfield. She hands him a slip of paper and gets in the car. Before she leaves, he insists Richard had no part in his crimes. She reassures him that Reacher knows and that Richard has nothing to fear. Meanwhile, Quinn arrives at an abandoned warehouse where Teresa is held in the basement. He tosses her some food and water, telling her people are searching for her. As he gets ready to inject her with drugs, he cruelly tells her that if she weren't valuable to his buyers, he would have used her himself, then chopped her up and dumped her body. She listens without reacting. When he moves closer, she fights back, but no matter how much she struggles, he forces the needle into her arm. At a motel, Duffy hands out lunch to Reacher, Neagley, and Guillermo. They go over details about the Yemeni buyers. Reacher figures out the weapons are meant for a terrorist attack on U.S. soil. Duffy decides to start calling around to see which private flights from Yemen have landed. Neagley asks to talk to Reacher alone. In the next room, she brings up Quinn. She wants to know how he survived. Reacher explains, and she points out this isn't like their past fights in Margrave or New York. Quinn's men are highly trained and armed to the teeth. Reacher asks if she's having second thoughts. She says no, but she wants it clear that she knows how dangerous this is. When she tells him how she tracked down Kostopoulos, he realizes she knew he was in Portland before he even called her about the sting. Knowing Reacher cares about Duffy, Neagley warns him to keep her out of the final fight. He says there's no way Duffy will agree, and Guillermo will be right there with her. At home, Richard is fixing his toy gun when Beck startles him. Richard tries to hide it, but Beck worries it might be real. He lifts the cloth and sees it's just a toy. Richard explains the epoxy needs a day to set. Beck is caught off guard, remembering playing with a toy gun as a kid. They talk about how Richard changed after his mother's death. Beck admits he was cold and distant on purpose, thinking it would toughen Richard up in case he lost another parent. He apologizes for his mistakes and promises to protect Richard from McCabe. He tells Richard he likes the toy gun, puts it down, and hugs his son. At the airfield, Neagley watches the Yemenis step off their plane and get into cars. Reacher checks in by phone, and she confirms they're on the move. At Beck's office, McCabe drinks scotch at his desk as Beck walks in. Beck reports that the storehouse is ready for the weapons deal. McCabe tells him to count inventory as the trucks get loaded. Beck asks where the trucks are headed. McCabe says the deal is at the salvage yard at 9, and Beck must leave his birthday party to be there. He assures Beck there will be time for cake with Richard afterward. Beck says Richard is going to a movie during the party, but McCabe grabs his only good ear, demanding that Richard stay home until the deal is done. He accuses Beck of planning a betrayal. Beck backs down and agrees to keep Richard in the house. Meanwhile, Neagley tails the Yemenis to their accommodations and checks in with Reacher. He tells her to stay on them so they can trap both sides of the deal. Beck calls Reacher and confirms the buy is happening at 9 at the salvage yard. Duffy and Guillermo arrive and suggest involving the ATF because of the large number of weapons. Reacher refuses, knowing the ATF will try to prevent him from taking revenge on Quinn. Duffy insists. She's meeting with the ATF, and if Reacher doesn't like it, he shouldn't come. Frustrated, Reacher leaves to get coffee. At the ATF office, Supervisor Sears is furious that Duffy waited so long to report their dead agent. He takes the intel and decides the ATF will send a team. Duffy argues that they also lost an agent, and that her informant is in danger. Sears agrees to let them stay in the surveillance van, but nothing else. Reacher suggests the ATF should also arrest McCabe's men at Beck's party. Sears asks why Reacher is even involved. Reacher explains his deal to take down Quinn. Sears tells him to stay in the van with Duffy and Guillermo. Reacher refuses and walks out. As he leaves, Sears warns that he has to report Duffy's actions to the DEA. Guillermo tries to take the blame, but Duffy won't let him. At the motel, Guillermo loads the car while Duffy and Reacher talk. Reacher says he wants his Rhonda moment, meaning personal justice. Duffy gets it, but says her focus is on saving Teresa. At the storehouse, Beck tells the foreman to finish loading the trucks and meet him at the salvage yard after he changes for his party. At home, Beck helps Richard with his bow tie and tells him to lock himself in his room at 9. McCabe cuts in, telling Beck to hurry up. At the salvage yard, ATF agents take their positions as the trucks roll in, followed by Beck's car. In the surveillance van, Reacher gets restless and steps outside for air. Duffy follows and finds him putting together a sniper rifle. They argue, but she gives up and goes back to the van. Reacher sets up and calls Neagley, telling her to disappear when this is over. A second vehicle pulls up, and he tells her the buyers have arrived. But Neagley, still following them, says they're still on the move. She describes her location, and Reacher realizes the deal is actually happening at Beck's house. The salvage yard is just a setup to take Beck down. Reacher quickly realizes the salvage yard meeting is a setup and cuts off his call with Neagley to deal with it. ATF agents wait for the buyers to step out of their car, but Beck stands there, confused by the delay. Up above, Reacher spots Quinn's men creeping in from the sides. He pulls out his sniper rifle and drops 2 of them before the rest open fire on the ATF agents. Beck scrambles into his car while Duffy and Guillermo throw on bulletproof vests and ram the surveillance van straight into the chaos. Reacher picks off 2 more enemies before storming into the yard. He guns down one with his pistol, headbutts another, steals his rifle, and takes him out. Duffy and Guillermo slide behind the van for cover while Reacher grabs another weapon off a dead man and keeps moving. He takes out another shooter as Beck tries to slip away. One of McCabe's warehouse men spots Beck and goes after him, but before he can finish the job, Reacher puts a bullet in his head. Beck, Reacher, Duffy, and Guillermo regroup and realize the real weapons deal is going down at Beck's house. Beck confirms Teresa was already there before the party even started. Suddenly, a phone chimes. Reacher finds one of McCabe's men trying to send a backup request. He shoves a gun in his face and forces him to delete it. Instead, he makes him type a new one. All good. Heading back now. Meanwhile, at Beck's house, McCabe blends in with the guests while the Yemeni buyers arrive. Outside, Neagley lurks in the trees, watching Paulie guard the entrance. Reacher calls to report that everyone at the salvage yard is dead except for him, Duffy, Guillermo, Beck, and the captured man. The plan is simple. Drive the truck straight into the compound and grab Neagley on the way. McCabe's man takes the wheel of the first truck while Guillermo struggles to keep up in the second. Inside the party, McCabe greets the Yemenis and hands their boss, Nasser, a picture of an unconscious Teresa. He tells them she's a goodwill gift to make up for shipping delays. Nasser says they'll enjoy the party first, then handle the deal. McCabe agrees and gives him the key to Teresa's room. Outside, Paulie waves the trucks in. As they park, Reacher looks for rope to tie up the driver but finds none. Paulie approaches, telling them to move the trucks to the other side of the carriage house. Duffy shouts for Reacher to have the driver agree, but it's too late. The driver is already dead because Reacher couldn't find rope. He tells the others to find Teresa and Richard while he deals with Paulie. Beck leads the group through the basement to sneak inside. Paulie opens the truck door and the driver's dead body falls out. Reacher ambushes Paulie with a belt around his neck and they fight. Duffy climbs through a basement window and lets the others in. Neagley changes into catering staff clothes borrowed from Beck and Guillermo. Beck tells Duffy Teresa is probably in the east wing, while Guillermo heads toward Richard's room. As Paulie and Reacher fight, Neagley blends into the party looking for McCabe and Quinn. The brawl moves into the carriage house, where both men end up buried under fertilizer bags. On the third floor, one of McCabe's men spots Guillermo leaving the bathroom, and they fight. Below, Richard hears the commotion from his room. Paulie digs out and finds Reacher unconscious. He grabs a chain, wraps it around Reacher's neck, and pulls him toward the rafters. Reacher wakes up, climbs the chain, braces against the rafter, and yanks the pulley loose. It's assumed he falls. Outside, Paulie hears the crash and turns to see Reacher emerging with a garden rake. In the bathroom, Guillermo knocks out his opponent using an electric shaver and a toilet tank lid. Catching his breath, he spots Richard peeking in and assures him he's there to help. Meanwhile, Paulie and Reacher's fight spills onto the lawn, rolling down toward the water's edge. They fall into a riptide hole where Paulie drags Reacher back under. They struggle until Reacher throat punches Paulie and leaves him sinking. Duffy searches the east wing for Teresa. At the party, Neagley finds Quinn but is caught by the head caterer. Thinking fast, she claims she was hired to investigate theft among the staff and asks him to keep watch. When she returns to the party, she realizes Quinn is gone. Meanwhile, Reacher takes the road back toward the house, but behind him, Paulie emerges from the forest, badly injured but still following. The slow, painful chase is on. Reacher reaches the gatehouse first, where a mounted machine gun is waiting. Paulie follows close behind. They fight hard, but Paulie gets control of the gun and aims at Reacher, bragging about his strength. He pulls the trigger, but the gun backfires. Paulie chokes on his own blood as Reacher watches. He had jammed the barrel with a bullet from the belt to make sure it would blow up. Inside, Duffy finds Teresa, but she is so drugged she can barely move. Downstairs, McCabe interrupts as Walid, the second in command of the Yemen buyers, complains about the delay. He wants the deal done fast because he has another meeting. He asks about Nasser, and Walid tells him Nasser went upstairs to check out his gift. Upstairs, Duffy hears footsteps. Nasser enters the room with his bodyguard, telling him to wait at the door. Inside, he only sees Teresa lying on the bed. When he starts undressing, Duffy steps out with her gun drawn. Reacher, now dry and armed with a shotgun, finds the weapons and cracks open the crates. McCabe's man, Rusty, leads Walid and another man into the building, but Reacher kills them both. He shoots another through a door. Inside, Neagley and Duffy hear the shots. Nasser calls for his bodyguard, but Duffy shoots him in the crotch. The bodyguard rushes in, and she takes him down too. Nasser groans in pain until she finishes him off with a headshot. She helps Teresa up and leads her out. Reacher crosses the lawn, enters the kitchen, and takes out two of McCabe's men on his way to the party. The Yemenis start looking for Walid, but McCabe intercepts them. He shoots them and grabs the satchel of cash. Gunfire breaks out between McCabe's men and the Yemen buyers, sending the party guests into a frenzy. Beck hears the chaos and rushes to find Richard. In another hallway, Guillermo tells Richard to run, but Richard runs straight into McCabe. McCabe grabs him and drags him into Beck's study while grabbing more weapons. Beck arrives holding the toy gun Richard had given him. He orders McCabe to let Richard go. McCabe, thinking the gun is real, lowers his weapon. Richard moves to Beck's side, but the toy gun crumbles in Beck's hands. McCabe realizes the trick and fires. Beck shoves Richard aside but takes the hit. Richard finds an automatic weapon and fires wildly, forcing McCabe to run. Richard kneels beside his dying father as Neagley arrives and takes in the scene. Richard, Beck's body, and the stolen money. Meanwhile, Quinn McCabe sprints down the hall. Reacher spots him but gets pinned down by a Yemeni shooter. He takes the guy out, but Quinn escapes out the front door, just as the Russians pull up. Takhtarov steps out and demands his money from McCabe. When McCabe comes up empty, Takhtarov gives the order to take him. Reacher steps in and makes it clear McCabe is his. Taktarov points out that Reacher is outnumbered and alone, but then Guillermo and Duffy appear. Neagley steps outside with the satchel of cash and offers to buy McCabe. Taktarov threatens to take both the money and McCabe, but Neagley pulls the pin from a grenade, warning that if he does not make a deal, he will get nothing. Taktarov decides the money is more important and takes it, leaving McCabe Quinn behind. Guillermo helps Richard, while Duffy calls for an ambulance for Teresa, noting that it will take a while, giving Reacher time to finish things. Neagley tells Reacher to do what he must and walks inside. Quinn quickly tries to bargain for his life. Reacher now believes Quinn truly had amnesia, but he says it does not matter. What matters is that her name was Dominique. Quinn's expression changes as he remembers the last time Reacher said those words to him. Reacher knows Quinn remembers now and shoots him. By morning, Richard looks out at the gatehouse and walls. Reacher asks if he will tear them down, but Richard is unsure. Reacher throws him the keys and tells him to take the money and run. This is his shot at freedom. As Reacher heads out, he crosses paths with Guillermo, and they wish each other well. Outside, Duffy is waiting. She's leaving the DEA and has already made sure Reacher and Neagley are in the clear. She says she's not into relationships and is moving on. Neagley stands by her car with breakfast and coffee. Reacher mentions that Duffy gave him the same goodbye speech he usually gives to others. Neagley, amused, says she understands him. He can't stand people who think they can do whatever they want without consequences, so he makes sure they pay for it. Later, Duffy and Guillermo gather Agent Elliott's badge and DEA ID and deliver them to his family. Reacher finds a motorcycle in Beck's storage and gets ready to leave. Nearby, Richard empties Beck's safe, grabs his toy gun and packs his things. Guillermo arrives home with flowers, and before he can even open the door, his wife, Moran, greets him with a smile. Back at the compound, Reacher watches Richard loading his car. Richard waves and Reacher gives him a nod. Richard drives off, grinning. In Boston, Duffy brings Teresa home. In Maine, Reacher rides away on his motorcycle, disappearing into the distance.